Hi everyone, welcome to this video, which explores the idea of Veganuary.
My name is Martin. I'm from ProVeg UK. We are a food awareness organisation. In the UK, specifically, we work with schools around school meals and trying to make them sort of healthier, more plant-based, and ultimately better for their health and the health of the planet.
So I'm Laura Chepner, and I'm the education officer also, but I'm at the Vegan Society. As a charity in general, we want to support people who make the decision to become vegan and hopefully encourage them to stay vegan. But my job specifically is to support educators in helping them understand vegan inclusion in schools, what that looks like, and supporting vegans in education to make sure that their needs are being met.
We're talking about Veganuary, and Veganuary, I guess, technically is a charity that was set up to really champion this month of January as an opportunity for people to think about eating plant-based food. I guess everyone starts the new year with New Year's resolutions and kind of momentum and enthusiasm, and that's why January was picked for this. Laura, what does it really mean to be vegan?
So I think a lot of people, when they first hear the word vegan, probably think that it's just to do with food. And food is a huge part of it. But being vegan is actually when a person makes a choice that they don't want to harm animals or they want to be living as sustainably as possibly as they can. What they do in making that choice is saying, I'd like to live by my ethics.
We want teachers also to feel confident that it's actually probably more common than they might think. That actually the stats show that about 16% of the population in the UK, then that's about 9 million people, eat plant-based diets.
Yeah, I mean, when I became vegan 10 years ago, I pretty much thought that I was the only one in the
Mm.
village. And it is remarkable now to just even if you're not 100% vegan or perhaps you're flexitarian or you're reducing the amount of meat that you eat, there will be someone somewhere everywhere now who you can speak to, maybe get advice from, learn from, and maybe even be a little bit persuaded by.
And I guess that's maybe also an important point to make is we're not doing this and saying for the month of January, only eat plants. You're not allowed to, and if you don't do it all of it, you can't do any of it. What we're saying is this is an opportunity to reflect and think about the food that you eat and what you consume. And
Every single decision as an adult and as a child that we make affects the public realm, where we spend our money, the food that we eat. And I've just found it a really interesting journey to learn about that and my effect and how I can reduce my effect on the world.
done a really good introduction and prep to the next kind of 5-10 minutes. What we want to do is run through a really good summary that should help teachers to be able to think about how they might incorporate the Veganuary to their teaching and into what they're doing in a school. So we've broken it down into these different areas of the timetable, and we're going to jump between some of the suggestions of Martin and Laura. So the first one is tutor time. So every single school has got tutor time, and it might be structured differently. You might have a bit more time than others, but what we've got is the seed of an idea that teachers might be able to incorporate into their tutor plans. So Martin, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so tutor time, registration, circle time, sort of always called different things, as you say. I think to start with, Laura said obviously it's much bigger than just this, but it might be sometimes easy to start with food, something everyone is involved with, they eat every day, the children. So first thing is sort of discussing the word diet, because often they'll hear it added with a vegan diet and just sort of discuss the word. I think often people, the word diet is seen with a weight loss diet. Actually, that is a type of diet. So it's sort of discussing how everyone in the class might have a different diet and sort of the reasons why people choose to follow those diets. It isn't always for the reasons they think. It might be actually their family, it can be religion, it can be ethical choices. Some people just do, it's just their preference. They just like certain foods. So beginning by just discussing those really is a good place to start.
Let's jump, Laura. What about your idea then?
So, I think it's important to discuss what is veganism. Again, because as I've said in this video, it's more than a diet, but you might not even know still at this point what that means. And that's because it involves a lot more things to do with what you buy and in the supermarket, what you put on your face, products that aren't tested on animals, clothing that you wear to ensure that it hasn't got any animal skins in it, certain businesses that you might not want to support if they are also supporting animal sports, for example. So it goes way beyond food. And so I think it's a little bit important to discuss that also. And then, you can really follow on with Martin's lesson after that, once you've discovered that food is a huge part of it, but not everything. And then I also think it's quite important as well to talk about the perspective of the animal, perhaps. Um, because a lot of people, not all of them, but most people will say that they are an ethical vegan because they just don't want to eat animals or the products that come from animals. And so I think it's just really important to discuss perhaps the perspective of the animal. Do you think that they want to be used in this way? And maybe have a philosophical conversation about that too.
So that's sort of the idea of sentience and thinking about consciousness and yeah.
That's absolutely right. Sentientism is a great word that it's taken me a long time to perfect how to say, and it might do for you too. But there's loads of really good resources out there as well that we can share with you about what it means to be sentient. And you can learn about that and then see things from the animal's perspective.
Okay, let's jump next one then. Lunchtime. So, every school there's some sort of lunchtime routine. It might vary, but there's definitely an opportunity to be able to link this into yeah, actually eating food in the school. So, Martin, what's your first idea?
Yeah, so we kind of that's our specialism as it's as an organisation is school meals. And sort of as a teacher, I think sometimes we're not always aware of actually what's happening in the canteen. We sort of quickly zoom through there, trying to spend as little time possible. So, and also with the children, it shows them a bit more how they can understand it by looking at the menu. So take their school menu, look at it, and just look at the options. Have you got options that day that if you wanted to have a vegan meal, what does it look like on the menu? Is it clear that there are vegan options? Are there logos on there? So actually go through that with the children. And also, it's important to show that these are for all. This isn't talking about, well, if you're a vegan, you can have it. But if you're not vegan, you're not allowed that choice. Often children think that those choices are just for those kind of people. And so it's sort of discussing those. And also, if you are a teacher and you're trying to encourage this, there's a few ways you can kind of do that. I remember as a teacher, I actually changed the order of the meals. You find in most schools, the meat meal or the animal-based meal will be at the top of the order. So when the children came in on my board, I just messed around with the order and maybe had that as the bottom option. And sort of the children then were thinking a bit more rather than just picking that top meal by default and sort of discussing what's on the menu. A lot of times used to Google because they weren't sure what some of the foods were. So I showed them a picture of it and said, this is actually what that meal looks like. So often with the curries would look exactly the same. They just might not have the chicken, it might have soy in it, but it still looked the same. And then when they saw the familiarity of the picture, they were like, well, I'll give that a go. And also, there's not an animal that's had to be harmed in creating that plate of food for me. And so there's sort of little nudges you could do as a teacher.
Yeah, that sounds really good. And then that leads Laura. What were you then thinking for lunchtime?
Yeah, so I'm in great admiration of everything they do over at ProVeg School Plates. I love it. They are definitely the front runners in that area. But I think with my specialism being inclusion, one thing that I think would be absolutely gorgeous to add to your practice during January would be to perhaps come into the canteen with the children and choose the vegan option, sit with the children and talk about how delicious it is and model that good behavior of knowing and saying that the vegan option, the plant-based option, isn't just for the vegans. Anybody can enjoy it. Anyone can benefit from eating it. And I just think that by being in there and showing that, it would just be a really lovely touch.
Okay, let's jump then to lessons. So obviously the core of what everyone's doing at school is teaching subjects, and there's lots of opportunities kind of, I guess, across English, math, science. It could actually be something with a more tangible link to food as well, but there's a whole variety of resources. So Martin, you're going to just signpost some of the ones that you think are useful.
Yeah, so that's great. I mean, that's the thing. Loads of resources are out there. You just have a little look around and you will find resources that you can use in your classroom. And we've created some, say, ProVeg, you've got our canteen to classroom. And we sort of look at lots of different things, but we link everything to the national curriculum. We were teachers, Laura was a teacher, we know just how busy and how full your curriculum is. So we've linked everything that we do with our resources to the national curriculum. So as you said, Paul, there's maths, there's geography, and this is something that you should take beyond this month and sort of think about in all of your sessions. Can you fit these kind of ideas and ideas into your lessons? So a few we've got is sort of, and we go from foundations up to key stage 2. So we've got a foundation subject around animals. And obviously, it's a difficult topic to adjust with animals. So we actually do where they create some food faces of animal faces. So it's just sort of a fun way of getting involved with kind of that sort of thinking of plant-based food and the link to animals without going into too much depth. Key stage one, again, it's really important. They get different colors of food. I think like beige is not really a color. I know sort of this becomes a thing of a beige food, and we're trying to move away from that. So children are able to make some rainbow skewers. You don't have to get rid of anything special for food, just getting any old food that's just different colors, fruits and vegetables, and get them trying them. They don't have to eat anything. They might just try it, lick it, but just encourage them into that sort of thing. Um, and then moving up this sort of lower key stage two lesson, we have around sort of creating a menu. So actually they decide on their menu. Now we've had schools that have actually then taken that to their catering team and turned that into an actual day of a planet-friendly day for their school. And sort of my favourite, we've done something before on this, Paul, is some myth busting. So there's lots of myths and things out there about vegans and vegan food and plant-based food and meat, and we need it for this. And a lot of them, unfortunately, to say are absolute rubbish. So it's a lesson where the children sort of learn that not everything they read or hear they can believe.
Oh, okay. And Laura, what about your suggestions?
Brilliant. So I've got a what is a vegan, which is differentiated, and I've done it from early years all the way up to key stage two. So there's a different version of that. I've also made a teaching and learning pack that goes along with the beautiful text called Vivi the Super Vegan by a lovely author called Tina Newman. She's actually got 3 books in her series, and I've done in my teaching and learning pack a 77-page differentiated each worksheet, which corresponds with each one of the year one, key stage one literacy targets. I'm about to finish book 2 for year 2 with all of the targets for literacy in year 2. So you can easily use that text as a muse to teach your key skills through. I'm currently just finishing an amazing book called Earthlings, which is for upper key stage 2, maybe lower key stage 2 as well, that I'm making some resources for, where it's almost like an animal farm book, where they see it from the children's perspectives, with the animals actually being the danger to them. It's a very clever book by an author called Ray Starr. So that's not out yet, but as soon as it is, you'll be able to link to that because it'll be up on our website. And then again, for key stage 2 and upper key stage 2, there's resources out there which are kind of, I guess, a sustainability comparison between burgers. And then I think what the best thing to do at the end of that is to have a burger taste test with all plant-based burgers, and they have to guess which one is the meat. The coup is obviously none of them are meat, but you'll find they do say it must be this one or it must be that one. And that's always just a fun way to involve some food, which, everybody loves to do in lessons, let's be honest.
Yeah, I think from both of you, this sounds really exciting in the sense of it's a way, it's an opportunity to kind of reinvigorate and make your teaching exciting by doing something slightly different, or just hanging it on the a theme for the month. And then also the thing that strikes me there is you're both talking about linking this to those wider skills. So a lot of what you talked about there, Laura, is literacy. Again, that's something everyone is very conscious of. Well, you can do that through the lens of this, of thinking about food or veganism and yeah, similar themes with you, Martin, there. So next one is then assembly ideas.
Yeah, so we actually had on the canteens classroom, there is an assembly. And one thing that I think is key in there is there's like a calculator of a meal swap. So it sort of shows the children that even if they swapped one meal a week, what would be sort of the greenhouse gas emissions saving, the land use saving and water saving. And then they can kind of see that their just little changes can have quite a big impact. And you can then scale that up for your class and scale that up for your school and scale up for your country. And then once they look into that, they can kind of see that what their little changes can add up to making a big impact. So I think that's a really sort of key and strong thing to do in assembly in a school to get everybody involved, the whole school community. And another thing, maybe with some older children, so upper key stage 2, even into secondary, is a video called Matilda and the Brave Escape. So it's based on a real news story that happened of a pig that escaped from a slaughterhouse. And it's an animation. It's really fantastic. And from that, I think teachers have a bit of freedom then to sort of take that in the direction that maybe their children lead them on. There might be some writing out of that. There might be some reporting. They might want to look into more about actually sort of, yeah, animal welfare and how that is policed and around our country. So I think that's quite a really powerful way into the discussion, really, around veganisms and animal welfare.
Laura,
Yeah, so I'd just like to say at this point, although we've got loads of resources online at the Vegan Society, I'm also a resource too. So I can gladly come to your school and perhaps do my own assembly with you or for you. And one thing that I've done in the past a couple of times that I absolutely love is using the hook in assembly, where I ask the question, how does eating a cow in the United Kingdom kill a parrot over in the rainforest? And throughout then the rest of the day, we discuss the sustainability, the environmental, detrimental happenings of the animal agricultural industry. But I just think that's a really smart way of, at any age, a child thinking, well, there can't actually be a connection, is there? Isn't there? And I think that butterfly effect, again, as I spoke of earlier about knowing that every single thing that you do affects the public realm is just a great way to hook them in, get them interested, and then throughout the rest of the day, week or month, however long you plan on spending on this, you're then working to answer that one key question, which will solidify their learning a little more, hopefully.
we were thinking also, Laura, this is a chance for you just to mention your book as well, which is another great resource. What's it called?
Yeah, so it's got a really catchy title, but it does exactly what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
It's called An Educator's Guide for Vegan Inclusive Teaching. And I wrote this a long time ago, after realizing that there wasn't any other resource out there that explained to teachers how they can be vegan inclusive. And I think now that the vegan population is growing, as you've said, it's probably more necessary now than ever. Back then, I didn't think anybody would be reading it, but people are still buying it. So, goes to show. And it just comes from a teacher's perspective of knowing that you're all busy people. You've got so much to do, especially with inclusion, and just trying to make it that little bit easier for you to A, understand why someone might become vegan, and then also how to differentiate for that in your practice. So yeah, it was also a book from now I'm a mother as well, and having vegan children in school and seeing that their needs weren't met in various different ways. So it's a helpful book and it's only short, but yeah, I recommend that if you would like to learn more and you are perhaps doing Veganuary because you have a vegan learner in your class, it might be useful.
Cool. Okay, so we've got three kind of topics, themes left. The next one then is thinking about how we can use homework as a way to kind of hook people. Martin, what's your idea?
So I think the main idea is to try and get people eating and trying these foods out. There's other areas to cover, and in the lessons there's always in canteens class, and there's always home tasks or further learning tasks that you might do in school. But I think the fun thing that for children would be cooking and trying some of these foods out, and they're not going to like all of them. Um, Often they sort of hear about tofu. You only like tofu, maybe just haven't had it cooked right. So go away and some experiments. I think there's so many things out here. This is a great month for it. We'd like the people to be doing this all the time because you go online and there's people and online chefs that have never done things like this before, do some vegan cooking or some plant-based cooking. So just go home and sort of encourage children to try out some foods at home. And then this is what we talk about, this sort of a ripple effect. Children often come out of school and like you ask them, what have you done today? And they'll say nothing. Whereas this is certainly something that could catch their imagination and they speak to their parents about it. And then maybe one of their parents changes, or a brother or sister or sibling, and that little ripple effect, the butterfly effect, as sort of Laura kept saying, is that we can then influence our communities. Children watch the news, they can see this sort of, even today, isn't it, with the wildfires, like climate change and all this sort of things is really there, and they're aware of that. Children aren't not aware of that. And so this is a little change that maybe they can make to feel that they're doing something and having a positive impact. So maybe just setting them up. There's lots of recipes out there. And even if they go away and they research their own, they find their own, and who knows what they can come back with. They might be the next super chef.
We were saying, weren't we? There's a lot of Instagram accounts that people may already know of, or that you can find of like relatively popular celebrity chefs who their whole thing is based around kind of veganism and plant-based food. Laura,
Yeah, Bosch just came to mind then. They're incredible, aren't they? So I was thinking for a homework project from perhaps my 11-year-old daughter's perspective, so maybe a little bit older. I thought it would be great if they could, as a friendship group, maybe perhaps challenge each other to do Veganuary together. And I thought it'd be quite cute to imagine them having little WhatsApp groups called Veganuary and them just kind of maybe sharing ideas and just kind of cheering each other on. So they're not being competitive. It's not as if each friendship group within the cohort would be, going at it against each other and pointing the finger. It would be more of just a fun, challenging way for friends to just kind of say, how are you doing? How are you going? And what can I learn from you? And just I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I can imagine, as a tutor group, sort of sharing photos of something someone's cooked or seen in the supermarket, or that again, kind of looping back in, checking in on people, kind of what their experience has been. Next one then is eco groups. So that most schools have got some sort of group of really proactive students that might have some weekly activities, people meeting at break or lunchtime or something. Um, what could they be doing, Martin?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously work directly with sort of catering and school canteens. So it'd be really good if they could maybe get involved with their canteen. And like we said, with the talk about the menu and looking at the menu and seeing what's on there. Are there options available? Would they like to see more options available? And speaking to their chefs, really. They may go home, like I said about the homework task, they might come in with a fantastic recipe or a fantastic food they've tried that they can scale up and put into the canteen. And also when we're talking about sort of climate and being a bit more eco-friendly, sort of food's a really good place to start. Schools do lots around recycling, they do lots around sort of litter picking and things like that. But food is something that's almost forgotten. And I've got to go going to schools and you talk about eco groups and they have all those high things about the recycling. But actually, if they're talking about impact, then maybe the food in the canteen could have a large impact, especially for their lives going forward as well. So I would sort of say maybe their group, see what's on there, and then speak to them. They can get in touch with us, like I'm welcome, email us, get in touch with ProVeg, and we might be able to help them along with that because they have the power. People power is a big thing now, and if they want to make the change, then hopefully their adults will jump on board and get involved with that. So that would be kind of my little thing for the group is look at your canteen and see if there's changes that you think you could be making, and if not, we'll help support them to make those changes.
Cool. And then Laura.
Yeah, that's lovely. I mean, I don't have much more to add on to that because, like I said, ProVeg are the front runners. They're amazing at doing what they do. I think that I would just encourage perhaps the eco group to maybe run an assembly of their own, get them to do some research about why food is important. And as Martin's mentioned, in the adult world, food isn't mentioned. When people talk about sustainability, it's plastic recycling. Even as adults, barely anyone at COP talks about food. So, it's not surprising that this is happening in our schools or isn't happening in our schools as well. But I think something would be really lovely would to learn from their peers. So as an eco group, your task is to learn about why food is important when it comes to this matter. And then they should be the ones to explain it to everybody else. As teachers, we love the kids to learn from each other.
Yeah, and I guess if teachers wanted to encourage their students to go and do some research, I guess the Vegan Society or ProVeg UK are good places to start in terms of finding good quality information. Just then to finish, in terms of teachers who might be thinking about a bit more developing their knowledge and understanding, maybe a bit of almost CPD, have you got suggestions of things that they should maybe read or watch or something to go and look at? Martin, what's yours?
Yes, so one thing I would definitely encourage them to go and look is a film called I Could Never Go Vegan. So me and Laura are lucky enough to go to the premiere actually of this film. And recently, at the moment, it is just about coming online to some UK streaming services. And what's great, if anyone sort of works in London, there's huge billboards in the underground for this as well. So I Can Never Go as Vegan. It's a really interesting film around the arguments and often the people say why they could never go vegan. And it sort of explores that actually a lot of those are based on fallacy or there's easy ways around it and sort of looks into that. And it's funny as well. I think sometimes we don't want to sort of be heavy and be sort of scared into things. So it's quite a sort of a documentary. So that's definitely a film that I would encourage people to go watch. I watched it with my son. He's only 13, and he really enjoyed it. I wouldn't necessarily put it with the primary school, but as a teacher, I definitely think it's a good place to start. Book-wise, there's a great book, How Buy the Bananas. It's not necessarily focused just on veganism, but it sort of talks about our impact and how our behaviors impact the planet. And I think it's a really good plan, and it's a really good one actually to then use with children. When I was reading, there's so many things that popped up in that book, and I was like, oh, that's a great idea. We should go in that. And we talked about this linking to everything, and that's a good book for that in your geography, your science, maths, everything. So that's a really great book to start. And if you are sort of super interested in your food and planet and the impact, a book called Ravenous by Henry Dimbleby. It's a great book, really interesting on sort of the food system and what needs to be changed and what's slowly changing, but we could all help to accelerate that.
Great. Some really good suggestions there. So, Laura, what about yours?
No, I was just thinking about how we bookend the conversation because we started off talking about the vegan camp out, and it just came to mind then that it's a really great place to learn as well because we do have an education tent and we have lots of great speakers. And this year we have Kip Anderson coming, who is one of the directors, producers, probably all, maybe none, of the Seaspiracy, Cowspiracy. Um, there's quite a few of them now on I might not say the name of the channel because you can watch them on many channels. But that those films are really enlightening, as well as one called Eating Our Way to Extinction, which is a little darker than perhaps the ones that Martin has mentioned. But then a really great book that I've read in the past, both before and since becoming vegan, is Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer, and I just think it is written so beautifully. And so I'd highly recommend that, as well as going on the Vegan Society website, where there is tons of information, tons of science, research, statistics, articles, and blogs. They'd be really good to watch or read as well.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for all your suggestions. Now, I think we should just finish maybe with kind of, yeah, some closing sentences. And just, is there, yes, this is a month of focus on veganism, but actually kind of how should people frame it? And is there anything kind of advice you'd give people? So, Martin, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a cliche. It's like veganism isn't necessarily the destination, it's the journey. And I think maybe that's what this month can be about, is sort of taking those steps. At ProVeg, you often use the word nudges. And I think that's what this is. It's about nudging. We're not sort of saying one way or this way or black and white or all or nothing. It's just making small little changes and nudging people in a certain direction. They might choose not to go that way. You might read up on this and not feel, but I think we should give them the information and the knowledge to the children and let them make the decision, and share with them the facts and the information and see where they're going. Because often children do make the right choice or the informed choice when they've got the information in front of them. So I think that's it. It's just sort of nudging and starting your journey. And actually, it might be that in a year's time, yeah, you are going to be leading on Veganuary in your school and everything like that. And you'll be from January the 1st, pushing everything out for the whole month. And also beyond that, I think that's the other thing to sort of say. This is just that first step that you can put into all of your teaching across the board, and it's just something new for the children as well. It's something different. It's not the same old, same old. It's something new, something different they might be excited by. So sort of just take your first few steps.
Do you want to add anything to that, Laura?
Well, that was beautiful sentiment, really. I think the only thing I would just say is that if you're stepping into a world that you know very little about, then just be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself. This is, it's a philosophical belief, it's a way of living, it's big. And so even if you just do it for one day this year, because perhaps you're feeling a little overwhelmed, then Veganuary isn't going anywhere, veganism isn't going anywhere. If just this year you do it for one day, then perhaps leading up to January next year, you'll feel a little more confident. You could perhaps do it for a couple of days or a week, and so on and so forth, until you are that person that Martin mentioned where you can actually lead on it. But, we know that you're very busy people, time is limited, so just go at your own pace, let the children lead, depending on how engaged and excited they are by what you're doing, that'll inform how we should go towards it next year.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for all of your kind of sharing all your expertise and enthusiasm. And yeah, we wish teachers the best of luck with all of this.
Happy Veganuary!
Yeah, good luck.